I thought I was alone, until an alien diplomat emerged from my wardrobe. Dominic Reed squinted through the eyepiece of his telescope, adjusting the focus for what felt like the 100th time that night. The small observatory atop Mount Wilson was silent except for the soft whir of equipment and his occasional frustrated sighs. As a junior astronomer at the facility, he often drew the late shifts, but tonight felt different. The stars seemed closer, more urgent in their twinkling. He'd been tracking an unusual object for the past hour, something that didn't match any known orbital patterns. According to his calculations, it was moving too erratically for a satellite and too fast for a comet. The computer couldn't identify it either, marking it as an anomaly in red text that pulsed mockingly on his screen. The coffee in his mug had long gone cold when the first tremor shook the building. Dominic grabbed his desk, steadying himself as the vibrations intensified. Through the dome's opening, he watched a streak of silver-blue light tear across the night sky, heading straight for the woods behind the observatory. His scientific instincts warred with common sense. Protocol dictated he should call it in. Probably a meteorite. Nothing more. But something about that light, the way it had moved, it had been too controlled, too deliberate. Grabbing his jacket and flashlight, Dominic headed outside. The autumn air bit through his clothes as he followed the fading glow between the trees. Branches crackled under his feet, and his breath formed small clouds in the darkness. The light grew stronger as he approached a small clearing, and then he saw it. A crater about 20 feet wide scared the forest floor, wisps of steam rising from its edges. But what caught his attention wasn't the impact site. It was the figure crawling out of it. Tall and humanoid, but definitely not human. Its skin had a metallic sheen, like brushed platinum, and what looked like crystalline structures protruded from its shoulders and spine. The being stumbled, falling to one knee. In the beam of Dominic's flashlight, he could see dark liquid seeping from several wounds. Not red blood, but something that shimmered like liquid starlight. "Stay back," the creature spoke, its voice resonating with harmonics that made Dominic's teeth vibrate. "You don't understand what's coming." Dominic should have run. Should have called security, the police, someone. Instead, he found himself moving forward. "You're injured. Let me help." The being's eyes fixed on him, 3 of them arranged in a triangle, each one swirling with colors that reminded Dominic of nebula photographs. "I am Phelxis," it said, "and by helping me, you endanger your entire world." "I'm Dominic," he replied, shrugging off his jacket to help stop the bleeding. "And I think my world was probably in danger the moment you crashed here." Phelxis made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it sounded more like wind chimes in a storm. Perceptive, for a species so young. "Very well, Dominic of Earth. I accept your aid, though you may live to regret this choice." As Dominic helped the alien warrior to his feet, the stars above seemed to pulse with new meaning. He'd spent his life studying them from afar, dreaming of what might exist out there. Now, supporting the weight of a being from another world, he realized those dreams had been painfully small. "We need to get you inside," Dominic said, glancing nervously at the sky. "Can you walk?" "For now," Phelxis replied, his crystalline structures dimming slightly. "But Dominic, you should know. They will have tracked my descent. The Vexari never leave survivors." "The Vexari. Pray you never have to learn more about them." Phelxis' middle eye fixed on him. "Though I fear you will, very soon." As they made their slow way back to the observatory, Dominic noticed new lights in the sky. Not stars, but something that moved with purpose. The night was no longer silent, filled instead with a low, distant hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. His quiet life of astronomical research had just become infinitely more complicated. But looking at the wounded alien warrior beside him, Dominic knew he couldn't have chosen differently. Sometimes, he realized, the most important discoveries weren't made through telescopes, but through choices made in moments of crisis. The universe had just gotten much bigger and much more dangerous. But perhaps that's what humanity needed, a push beyond the comfortable boundaries of earthbound existence. As they reached the observatory door, Dominic couldn't help but smile grimly. He'd wanted to make revolutionary astronomical discoveries. He just hadn't expected them to come crashing into his forest. "What are you thinking?" Phelps asked, noticing his expression. "I'm thinking," Dominic replied, "that I'm going to need a lot more coffee." Dawn painted the observatory windows in pale gold as Dominic finished bandaging the last of Phelps's wounds. The alien's crystalline growths had begun to pulse with a stronger light, which he hoped was a good sign. They'd spent the night converting his small office into a makeshift medical bay, using supplies from the first aid kit and some unusual devices Phelps had salvaged from his crashed vessel. "Your primitive medical techniques are surprisingly effective," Phelps observed, flexing what passed for fingers on his metallic-sheened hand. "Though I admit I didn't expect adhesive bandages to work on non-organic life forms." "You're non-organic?" Dominic asked, collecting the bloody gauze that still shimmed with starlight. "But you bleed." "Reality is rarely binary, Dominic. My people, the Lumini, exist in a state between organic and crystalline life. It makes us valuable to the Vexari." A series of rapid beeps from Dominic's computer interrupted them. On the screen, satellite tracking showed multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere. They were small, stealthy, and moving in formation. "Scout ships," Phelps said grimly, his three eyes focusing on the display. "They're earlier than I expected. Your planet's detection systems are remarkably primitive. They register these vessels as space debris." Dominic ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "Why are they here? What do they want?" "The Vexari are collectors, harvesters of unique biological and technological developments across the galaxy. My people's crystalline nature made us perfect targets for their experimentation. We fought back, formed a resistance, but," Phelps's voice took on a hollow quality, "I am one of the last free Lumini. And now they've found Earth. Yes, your species has something they want desperately: adaptability. Human beings can survive in almost any environment, evolve rapidly compared to most species. The Vexari see you as the key to perfecting their biological weapons." The implications hit Dominic like a physical blow. "They want to experiment on humans. Worse, they want to harvest your genetic adaptability and combine it with other species. Create the perfect biological weapons." Phelps stood, his crystalline structures casting prismatic patterns on the walls. "I came here tracking their research vessel, hoping to stop them before they found your world. I failed." Outside, the first rays of sunlight caught something metallic moving through the clouds. The scout ships were getting closer. "We need to warn people," Dominic said, already reaching for his phone. "The government, the military." "And tell them what?" Phelps asked. "That an alien told you about an invasion. They'll dismiss it as hysteria, or worse, they'll believe you and panic. Either way, it will alert the Vexari that we're here." "Then what do we do?" Phelps moved to the window, his reflection overlaying the dawn sky. "Before I crashed, I managed to send an encoded transmission to the Resistance. If it reached them, help will come. But we need time, and we need proof that humanity is worth saving." "Worth saving?" Dominic felt a flash of anger. "We're talking about the enslavement of my entire species. The galaxy is vast, Dominic, and filled with suffering. The Resistance cannot fight every battle. We need to prove that humanity has more to offer than just genetic potential." A plan began forming in Dominic's mind. The observatory's mainframe. It contains detailed atmospheric data, satellite tracking, everything we've recorded about these anomalies. If we could package that with your knowledge of the Vexari, we could create a comprehensive threat assessment. Phelps finished. Evidence that humans are capable of understanding and addressing cosmic-scale dangers. Yes, this could work. They spent the next hours compiling data, with Phelps translating complex alien concepts into terms Earth scientists could understand. Dominic watched in amazement as the alien's crystalline protrusions interfaced directly with his computer, streams of data flowing like light through fiber optic cables. "There's something else you should know," Thelxis said as they worked. "The Vexeri, they don't just take bodies. They harvest memories, experiences, everything that makes a species unique. They believe that by collecting enough perspectives, they can understand and control the universe itself." "That's impossible," Dominic protested. "Is it? Your own scientists theorize that consciousness affects quantum outcomes. The Vexeri simply take this to its logical extreme. They believe that by combining enough conscious perspectives, they can manipulate reality itself." A chill ran down Dominic's spine as he looked at the data flowing across his screen. Humanity wasn't just facing invasion. They were facing the potential loss of everything that made them human. The sun climbed higher, and with it, the scout ships drew closer. Time was running out, but as Dominic watched Thelxis work, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Not just for survival, but for something greater. Humanity had dreamed of first contact, of joining a larger galactic community. Now that dream had arrived in the worst possible way. But perhaps that's what would make them stronger. "They're beginning their scan," Thelxis announced, his crystals dimming slightly. "Once they confirm human genetic compatibility." "They won't," Dominic said firmly, "because we're going to stop them. Together." Thelxis' three eyes fixed on him, swirling with colors that seemed to reflect both concern and admiration. "Your species' optimism is either your greatest strength or a fascinating form of delusion. I'm curious to find out which." The first global blackout hit at noon. Across the planet, power grids flickered and died. Communications went dark, and satellites blinked out one by one. In the observatory, Dominic watched as his equipment shut down, screens going black despite their backup power systems. "They're starting," Thelxis said, his crystalline structures pulsing with agitated light. "The Vexari always begin with isolation. Cut off communication, create chaos, then strike while the population is disoriented." Through the observatory's windows, they could see panic unfolding in the city below. Cars stopped in the streets, their electronics dead. People emerged from buildings, looking up at skies that had taken on an unsettling purple tinge. "We can't wait any longer," Dominic decided, pulling an old film camera from storage. "Even if they think we're crazy, we have to try warning someone. And this," he held up the mechanical camera, "should still work despite their tech interference." They made their way down the mountain in Dominic's ancient Jeep, its simple mechanical engine unaffected by the blackout. Thelxis huddled in the back, his metallic skin reflecting the strange light from above. As they drove, Dominic noticed more people pointing at the sky, filming with their useless phones out of habit. The military base at the mountain's foot was their best chance. As they approached the gate, they saw soldiers already mobilizing, their faces tense with the knowledge that something unprecedented was happening. "Stop right there." A guard raised his weapon as Dominic's Jeep approached. "This is a restricted area during emergency protocols." Dominic raised his hand slowly. "I'm Dr. Dominic Reed from the Mount Wilson Observatory. I know what's causing this, and you need to hear me out." "Sir, step out of the vehicle and—" The guard's words cut off as Thelxis emerged, his crystalline structures casting prismatic light across the checkpoint. What followed was a blur of activity. Being surrounded by soldiers, rushed into a secure facility, separated and questioned. Hours passed before they were finally brought before Colonel Regina Harrison, whose weathered face showed she'd aged years in a single afternoon. "Let me get this straight," she said, studying the photographs Dominic had taken. "These Vexari want to harvest humanity for our genetic adaptability, and your friend here is part of an alien resistance movement." "That's the simplified version," Dominic confirmed. "But there's more." "Show them." "Thelxis." The alien warrior stepped forward, his crystals brightening. From them projected a holographic display of Earth, surrounded by pulsing red points of light. "These are Vexari harvest ships, already in position. The blackout was Phase 1. Phase 2 will be. The ground shook violently, cutting him off. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Multiple impacts reported worldwide. An officer burst in. Something's falling from orbit. Huge structures, landing in major cities. Harvest towers. Phelps's voice carried an edge of fear. They're moving faster than expected. Colonel, you need to understand. This isn't a war for territory. The Vexari don't want Earth's resources or space. They want humanity itself. Every person they capture becomes part of their collective, their memories and experiences harvested to fuel their consciousness manipulation technology. Colonel Harrison's face hardened. How do we fight them? Conventional weapons are useless against their shielding, Phelps explained. But there might be a way. Your species has something unique, not just genetic adaptability, but cognitive adaptability. You think differently than any species I've encountered. The Vexari's greatest weakness is their rigid, hierarchical consciousness network. If we could introduce human unpredictability into their system, we could overload it. Dominic finished, excitement building. Like a computer virus, but for their collective consciousness. It would require direct interface with their harvest towers, Phelps cautioned. A human volunteer would need to allow themselves to be partially processed by their systems. The risk would be. I'll do it, Dominic said without hesitation. The room fell silent. Colonel Harrison studied him carefully. You understand this is a suicide mission. With respect, Colonel, if we do nothing, humanity's extinction is guaranteed. At least this gives us a chance. Outside, the purple sky had darkened to a deep violet. New lights appeared, not stars, but thousands of Vexari ships descending through the atmosphere. Humanity's long isolation in the cosmos was ending, not with handshakes and peace treaties, but with the fight for survival itself. Phelps placed a crystalline hand on Dominic's shoulder. The resistance ships I contacted, if they receive my message, they're still days away. We would be alone in this attempt. That's nothing new for humanity, Colonel Harrison said, her voice carrying new steel. We've always been alone, looking up at the stars. Maybe that's what made us strong. She turned to her officers. Begin worldwide communications using any means necessary. Radio, Morse code, signal fires if we have to. If we're making a stand, we do it together. As the base erupted into activity, Dominic looked at Phelps. You don't have to stay. This isn't your fight anymore. The alien warrior's 3 eyes swirled with complex emotions. Perhaps that's why I must stay. My people fought alone against the Vexari and failed. Maybe it's time to try something new, something human. The harvest tower loomed over the city like a dark crystal needle piercing the violet sky. From their vantage point, in a makeshift command center, Dominic and Phelps watched as humans demonstrated exactly why the Vexari had chosen them as targets, and why that might prove to be a fatal mistake. Your people are disturbing, Phelps observed as reports flooded in. Around the world, humanity was adapting to the invasion in ways no one could have predicted. In Tokyo, gamers had realized their VR controllers could interface with Vexari tech. In Mumbai, classical musicians discovered certain ragas disrupted the aliens' neural networks. A group of kindergarten teachers in Stockholm had somehow tamed a harvester drone using playground games. That's what you get when you target a species that turned falling out of trees into parkour, Dominic said, studying the latest data from their experiments. Colonel Harrison's team had been working around the clock, combining Phelps's knowledge with human innovation. The interface chamber is ready, Dr. Lakshmi Patil announced, entering the command center. The brilliant neurologist had been essential in understanding how human consciousness could be weaponized against the Vexari, though I still think this is insane. Insanity might be our greatest weapon, Dominic replied, following her to the laboratory they'd constructed beneath the base. The chamber waited, a hybrid of Earth technology and salvaged Vexari components. It looked like a cross between an MRI machine and an alien chrysalis. The test subjects showed promising results. Lakshmi explained, checking readings on her tablet. They'd started with simple consciousness transfers, volunteers briefly connecting to captured Vexari tech. The harvester networks can't process human creativity efficiently. We think it's because we don't think linearly. Our minds make connections that their systems read as errors. Errors that compound exponentially, Thelxis added. Like introducing chaos theory into a rigid mathematical system. But Dominic, his three eyes swirled with concern. A full interface is different. The previous tests were moments, seconds. This would be complete integration, Dominic finished. I know, but it's our best chance. A tremor shook the facility. Above ground, the harvest towers were becoming more aggressive. Reports indicated thousands already taken, their consciousness absorbed into the Vexari collective. Each loss made the aliens stronger, more adaptable themselves. They're learning. Colonel Harrison strode in, her uniform dusty from the latest surface operation. Our earlier tactics are becoming less effective. They're starting to predict our unpredictability. Then we do this now, Dominic said firmly, before they figure out how to counter human nature entirely. The next hour was a blur of preparations. Lakshmi's team attached sensors to Dominic's body, while Thelxis made adjustments to the interface chamber. The plan was audacious. Dominic would allow himself to be partially processed by the Harvest Tower systems, but instead of being absorbed, he would introduce what they called the humanity virus into their network. The program is ready, Lakshmi announced, holding up a neural transmitter. Once inside their system, it will use your consciousness as a template to generate millions of randomized human thought patterns. If our calculations are correct, the chaos should cascade through their entire network. And if your calculations are wrong? Thelxis asked. Then I join the collective, Dominic said quietly. Become another processing node in their consciousness farm. The room fell silent. Through the basement walls, they could hear the low hum of the harvest tower growing stronger. Time was running out. Dominic. Thelxis stepped forward, his crystalline structures pulsing with emotion. When I crashed in your forest, I thought I had failed my mission, my people. But watching humanity fight back, you've shown me something I thought was lost in the galaxy. Hope. Hope's good, Dominic managed to smile. But I'll take some of that Lumini luck too, if you're offering. To everyone's surprise, Thelxis reached up and removed one of his smaller crystals. Among my people, these are more than decorative. They store memories, experiences. He pressed it into Dominic's hand. Let it remind you who you are when they try to make you forget. The crystal was warm, humming with alien life. Dominic closed his fingers around it just as another tremor rocked the facility. Multiple breaches topside, Harrison reported, checking her radio. They're making a push. It's now or never. Dominic took one last look at his unlikely allies, the alien warrior who had become a friend, the colonel who had believed the impossible, the scientist who had helped bridge two worlds. Then he stepped into the chamber. Remember, Lakshmi said as the systems powered up, your consciousness will experience time differently once connected. What feels like days might be seconds, or vice versa. Focus on what makes you human. That's easy, Dominic replied as the chamber began to close. Humans never know when to quit. The last thing he saw was Thelxis giving what appeared to be a salute, his three eyes swirling with colors that might have been pride. Then the chamber sealed, and Dominic felt his mind begin to expand, reaching toward the vast, alien network that waited above. The battle for humanity's soul was about to begin, and its greatest weapon would be the very chaos that the Vexari had hoped to harvest, the beautiful, unpredictable essence of what it meant to be human. Inside the Vexari network, consciousness moved like light through crystal. Dominic felt himself stretched across infinite digital space, his thoughts fragmenting and reforming in patterns that defied human understanding. The collective was vast, a galaxy of harvested minds, all singing in perfect, terrible harmony. But where others might have lost themselves, Dominic held onto Thelxis's crystal, its alien warmth anchoring him to his identity. He began to push back against the harmonious flow, introducing discordant notes of human chaos into the stream. In the physical world, Lakshmi's monitors exploded with activity. "It's working," she announced, watching as disruption spread through the Harvest Tower systems. "The network is trying to process his consciousness, but it's creating feedback loops." Phelps stood transfixed by the readings, his crystalline structures resonating with the energy pulses. They've never encountered anything like this. Human minds, they don't think in straight lines. Every attempt to categorize and control his thoughts creates new, unexpected patterns. Above ground, the Harvest Towers began to react. Their smooth surfaces rippled like disturbed water, the purple light they emitted flickering erratically. The Vexari ships in orbit shifted formation, attempting to compensate for the growing chaos in their network. Inside the collective, Dominic felt the alien consciousness trying to contain him, to force his thoughts into orderly channels. But he thought about Earth's history, about jazz musicians improvising impossible melodies, about children inventing games with rules that changed every minute, about scientists dreaming up quantum physics on bicycle rides. He thought about humanity's greatest strength, the ability to embrace contradiction, to find patterns in chaos and chaos in patterns. And as he thought, he felt others joining him. The thousands of humans already absorbed into the collective, their minds awakening to their own power. In the command center, Colonel Harrison watched in awe as Harvest Towers worldwide began to shudder. "Status report. The virus is cascading," Lakshmi explained, her fingers flying over keyboards. "Dominic's consciousness isn't just disrupting the network, it's teaching the other captured humans how to resist. They're creating a chain reaction of unpredictability." Phelps suddenly straightened, his three eyes blazing. "The resistance fleet, they're here." Through the facility's windows, they watched as new ships appeared in the violet sky, their crystalline forms distinctly different from the Vexari vessels. The Lumini had arrived, but the battle was already being won from within. The Harvest Towers began to fail, their systems overwhelmed by the very consciousness they had tried to harvest. Inside the network, Dominic felt the Vexari collective fracturing, unable to maintain control as millions of human minds embraced their own chaos. In a desperate attempt to preserve their unity, the Vexari began ejecting consciousnesses from their network. Around the world, people who had been absorbed began returning to their bodies, forever changed but unbroken. The Harvest Towers retracted, folding in on themselves like closing flowers. "They're retreating," Harrison announced as the Vexari ships began to pull back, pursued by the Lumini fleet. "Whatever you did in there, it worked." But in the interface chamber, alarms were blaring. "His vital signs are critical," Lakshmi warned. "The strain of maintaining consciousness in their network. We need to get him out now." Phelps placed his hands on the chamber, his crystals pulsing in rhythm with its energy field. "Dominic, if you can hear me, follow my resonance. Come back to yourself." Inside the dissolving network, Dominic felt himself scattered across virtual space. But there was a sound, a crystalline hum that reminded him of friendship, of Earth, of home. He followed it, pulling his fragments back together, remembering the shape of his own mind. The interface chamber opened with a hiss of escaping vapor. Dominic lay still for a moment, then opened his eyes. "Did anyone get the license plate of that consciousness network that hit me?" Relief flooded the room. As they helped him sit up, Dominic noticed changes. Faint crystalline patterns traced his skin where he had held Phelps' crystal, and his perception seemed somehow broader, as if he could still feel echoes of the vast network he had disrupted. "The Vexari will return," Phelps said, helping Dominic to his feet. "They've never been defeated like this before. They'll adapt, try to find ways around human unpredictability." "Let them try," Colonel Harrison replied. "We'll be ready. And this time, we won't be alone." Dominic looked out at the clearing sky, where Lumini ships now floated peacefully alongside Earth's aircraft. "You know what this means, don't you?" Humanity just became part of something bigger. The galaxy isn't just going to ignore us anymore. They never should have ignored you in the first place. Thelxus said, "My people thought we could resist the Vexari alone, and we failed. But humanity, you showed us that true strength lies in embracing chaos, in combining the unexpected. Perhaps that's what the galaxy has been missing." As dawn broke over a changed Earth, Dominic thought about the future. Humanity had faced its first major galactic crisis and emerged stronger, not just surviving, but proving they had something unique to offer the cosmos. The Vexari had wanted to harvest human adaptability. Instead, they had unleashed it. So, he turned to Thelxus. Does this make Earth part of the resistance now? The alien warrior's crystals pulsed with amusement. Better, it makes the resistance part of Earth. Though, he added, looking at the humans around him, I suspect the galaxy isn't quite ready for what that means. Good, Dominic grinned. That's exactly how we like it. As cleanup crews began dismantling the harvest tower and scientists eagerly studied the alien technology left behind, Dominic felt the crystalline patterns on his skin hum with possibility. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, and they had done it their way, with creativity, courage, and just the right amount of chaos. The stars above seemed brighter somehow, no longer distant lights but doorways to new adventures. Earth wasn't alone anymore, and the galaxy would never be the same.